to Inner Peace Better Health, where we explore the surprising intersections between mindset, money, and well being. I'm your host, Saima, and today we are joined by Chris Cannon, serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, and the visionary behind Vesi, a system that helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs achieve true freedom, finances, and fulfillment. Chris is here to challenge a bold idea. Could the story you're telling yourself and your clients be silently sabotaging your income? Now, if you have ever wondered why your brilliance offers aren't hitting home, you don't just want to miss the conversation. Let's get into this power and peril of storytelling. So, Krish, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you're warmly welcome. Now, let's talk about you talk about story selling as both an art and a trap. So, what's the hashtag number one way you see entrepreneurs getting the story wrong?
Well, one thing we have to understand is that there are two different stories. One story you hear a lot of people talk about where it's like crafting your story and like engaging people and drawing people into your story to buy your product or service. But the other story, which I think is even more important, is the internal story, the story that we tell ourselves. Some people call it, like internal dialogue or self-talk, but either way, it's an internal story. And the internal story really drives everything because no matter what kind of outer story you tell yourself, the internal story really drives everything. It's kind of like a car. You could have the most beautiful car in the world, but if you don't have an engine or some kind of way to propel that car forward, it's not going to go anywhere. And that's the same thing as it is with stories. Specifically, how we tell our stories will determine if we fail or succeed. Because either way, we're following some kind of roadmap, whether it's a story or not. But the internal story really drives everything. But that's the one thing that most people don't really focus on. But it will cause your income to just be down the drain or cause it to be non-existent.
Mm-hmm. That's noteworthy. So, can you share an example of a time you had to, reframe your own story to get better results?
100%. So, given a little bit about my background, so I was labeled dyslexic. I was born to teen parents, and I failed a third grade almost twice. And so, the story that I was telling myself in terms of internally is that I wasn't enough. And so when it came to like entrepreneurship, fast forwarding, being in business, a lot of times I wouldn't charge enough because I didn't feel like I was enough. I wouldn't go after things because I didn't feel like I was enough. Um, there were certain people that I would work with, but I knew I can get them better results if I charged them more, but I wouldn't do it because I didn't feel like I was enough. And so it wasn't until I started to reframe, like a large part of what happened to me in the past did not happen to me, it happened for me. And it was something that allowed me to connect with more people at a deeper level. And the thing that I understand is that no matter where we are in this world, most of us have felt hopeless on some level. And it's like when you have experienced some type of trauma or devastation or low point, sometimes those are the very things that cause you to actually connect with people at a deep level. But it's the thing that we want to keep close. We don't want to share that part of us. But once we knew, we give other people permission to do the exact same. And so it's like when I started to see that what happened to me was happening for me in my past, and it was something that allowed me to connect with people at a deeper level, I started to see the value in that. Because it's like when you think about your story was something that you lived. And it's like if you can teach somebody a lesson from your story, and let's say that happened 20 years ago, that's 20 years of experience that you're giving to somebody in a book, a coaching session, or whatever it is you're selling. And so no matter what price you're charging them, you're giving them a discount. And I say that because time is the most valuable asset that we have. And if you have 20 years of experience that you're going to give me in an hour or a week or even a year, whatever I pay you is a discount because no matter what, we can never go back to that 20 years that you yourself live. And so when I kind of got that perspective, it reframed a lot of what I was charging, a lot of what I was doing, and a lot of what I thought was possible for myself and those that I serve.
Oh, that really hits, Chris. And I think a lot of us fall in love with our own narrative and forget to check whether it's actually working for the audience, right?
Right. I love how you put that. We fall in love with our own narrative, you know, and sometimes that love might be an abusive love because it doesn't really serve us at a high level. So I love how you put that.
Oh, thank you. Now, you emphasize a connection between purpose and profit. So, how can entrepreneurs tell if the story is aligned with the deeper purpose or if it's just formative?
Well, a lot of the stories that we have are really they're just stories, you know, like they're just made up. And the thing is, sometimes we believe something that isn't true, and sometimes we don't believe something that is. And so, really, it's all about how you choose to approach the story. And it's like when you think about affirmations, for instance, like a lot of people are really big on affirmations, and those affirmations are something when you really think about it, it's not true in the moment. You know, if somebody has an affirmation, you know, and let's say they're like trying to get lose weight or something like that, and let's say they're 200 pounds, but their affirmation is, "I am 150 pounds and I am beautiful and I live on this sunset." You know, that's really not true in that moment, but it's a story that they're telling themselves. Now, for a lot of people, affirmations don't work, but for some people they do. But either way, it's a story that they're telling themselves. But it's all about how they choose to approach and position that story and connect to it. And so the same is true when it comes to like empowerment. It's like you can take your story and just reframe it. And whether it's true or not, if it serves you to serve other people, it's like utilize it. Now, I'm not saying like go around and just lie about everything, but I'm saying if you can like reframe and reposition something as a story, it can serve you at a better level and it can help you to become the best version of yourself. You know, because really when we think about even the future is also a story. When we think about like planning for the future is a story because we haven't been there yet. So how do we know what it's going to be like until we get there? The only way that we can actually determine it is somewhat of a story. And sometimes it's like we believe the story until we get to the reality of the situation. And that can be a positive and it can be a negative because sometimes people have a negative expectation of the future, just like they do a positive expectation of the future. But either way, it's a story. And it's like we don't realize that whatever we expect is what we experience. And so when you think about somebody who has a positive story for the future, they're going to expect the positivity. And the odds of them having a positive experience is a lot greater than somebody who has a negative experience based on what they expect.
I completely agree. And as you said, that the future is also a story. Well said.
Yes.
hmm So, do you think that alignment always translates into higher income, or are there cases where that's not true?
I think like stories has a direct correlation to income from the perspective that you have people that might have the same product, they might have the same content, the same information, and one person charges $47 and another person charges $4,700. They charge 100 times more and it's the exact same thing. And the only difference is the story. And sometimes when people who like me at one point, they when they feel like they're not enough, they charge accordingly. Like everything that they do is a reflection. So it's like whatever inner image somebody have of themselves is always going to be followed with an outward expression. And so when you see people that's not charging enough money, that's an indication that they don't feel like they're enough. And when you see somebody who's charging, you know, a lot more money, that's also an indication of them seeing the value because sometimes it's not so much about us as it is about the value that we give. And we don't realize that sometimes when we don't charge people enough money, we do them a disservice because when people invest money, they show up to the level of their investment. But when we make it about us by not charging enough, you know, or feeling like we're not enough, we do the clients and we do ourselves a disservice because we fail to put service above self. And when you really put service above self, you're going to do what's best for the people that you're serving. And sometimes when you charge them more money, you're actually doing them a favor because you're allowing them to, number one, invest more in themselves because now they feel like they're enough. Because a lot of people, they don't feel like they're enough because they never invested themselves. And so when they invest at a higher level, they start to feel like they're enough. But then they also show up at a higher level and they get better results overall.
Mm, I love that, Chris, that you highlight purpose here. And it's so easy to chase sales and miss the deeper current that truly sustains a business and a life, no?
Right. Right. Yeah, because I really think that when it comes to business and like serving people, it's it's not so much about money. Like sometimes money is the measure that we use, but I think sometimes the best way for us to use money is to measure the amount of money we have based on the amount of people that we help them that we served. It's not so much about us. And it's like when we approach business from that regard, like we'll never have a shortage of money because we're serving people. And it's like when you serve people, what you get from the fulfillment you experience from serving them will far exceed whatever money could have done for you. Because and I really believe that like in life, and not just in business, but in life, I think that it's very important for us to have freedom, finances, and fulfillment. And it's like when you have all three, nothing is missing. But if you only have the money, but you don't have the fulfillment, then people they self-sabotage because they find some kind of way to try to make themselves feel more fulfilled because they don't have the fulfillment. But if you have the fulfillment, but you don't have the money, that's only going to last a matter of time as well because you might have family depending on you. And it's like all of the fulfillment that you get, sometimes you can't transfer that to them to pay bills and things like that. So I think it's very critical to have all three, the finances, the freedom, and the fulfillment. And it's like when you have all three, there's nothing missing and you can serve people at a higher level because you yourself is showing up as your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. So, have you seen cases where, fixing the external story led to major internal breakthroughs for clients?
I have seen that. So when the external story is fixed, sometimes it can have an influence on the internal story. But again, the internal story is the most important. However, it's like the words that we speak influence us more than any other voice outside of us. And we want to start there because what we fail to understand is that like two people are in a conflict, sometimes it's not what the other person says, but it's what the person says to themselves when the other person stops talking. So our voice is very, very influential. And so sometimes the story that you communicate externally can have an influence on how you feel internally. And it's like once you change that narrative and once you get the internal buy-in and you change that story, it starts to have this ripple effect on various areas of your life because you now start to find evidence of proof of what you're saying. And so once you do that, it just makes everything just so much easier and the kind of like the results kind of speak for themselves.
That's such a refreshing perspective, Chris. And we usually think of storytelling as a business tool, but you're reminding us it's a healing tool too.
Yes, because I think that even when you think about business, sometimes our home life is also a reflection of how effective that we are in business. People can have success in business, but it's like if your home life is not good, then there's only so much success that you're going to have. And it's like a lot of times our home life is driven by a story. It's also driven by the stories of the people that we are in a home with. And so it's like internal stories are not just something that are good for us to master in business, it's something for us to master in life. And it's like once we master the internal stories, we just have better connections and better relationships with everyone around us. And that also reflects in how we do business because sometimes people can be drawn to you, not so much what you say, but what you feel about yourself inside. And they don't really know how to communicate that, but they're just drawn to it. And a large part of what you feel inside that they're drawn to is a reflection of the story, number one, that you have told yourself, but also the fact that you live and just the harmony that you have in your home that's now reflected in the world by way of how you show up in it.
Hmm? So, can you share one red flag entrepreneurs should watch for in the like messaging to keep it to keep it ethical and authentic?
So I think one red flag in entrepreneurship is when people know they can be playing at a larger game, but they keep holding themselves back because they're trying to stay safe. So for instance, if somebody has a business, but they know they can actually serve more people, but they have like these internal thoughts of I'm not good enough, who am I to charge more or who am I to serve more or who am I to whatever, it's very important to challenge those thoughts. And earlier I said like for a lot of people affirmations don't work. And what I really encourage a lot of my clients to do is not use affirmations, but use arguments. And so whenever you have some kind of internal like negative story that comes up and it's causing you to like play small in entrepreneurship where either you're not charging more or you're not doing more, or let's say you're in business, but you've always thought about writing a book, but you're like, what am I going to write about? Create arguments around why you should be whatever or why you should do whatever. And so what does that look like? That looks like, um, if somebody wants to write a book, they can have an argument, it's important for me to write a book because, and it's like the because is whatever they want to, because I'm going to serve people at a higher level like me, and they're going to have a better life as a result of the book that I write, or because when I write this book, it's going to cause me to leave a legacy to my family that they can be proud of, or because when I share my story, it's going to cause other people to get permission to share their stories, and it's going to make so many other people's lives better as a result of it. But it's like using the because is like an argument that you can argue for your success and why you should do it. Because the thing about the mind is that it argues all the time. So if you give the mind something to argue like as a positive benefit to you, like it's arguing for something, then your mind's going to constantly look for evidence as to why we want that, like why that's important for us to have. And so the mind, the unconscious mind, is going to look for evidence and seek out things to make that a reality in your life by using an argument. Because if we just use arguments as an effective tool, sky's the limit in terms of what we can have in our lives.
Mm-hmm. That's a fine line to walk, Chris. And I think your answer will resonate with anyone who's ever felt uneasy about selling in that first place.
Yes, and I think when it comes to selling, a lot of, and I speak for myself, like I used to have a lot of resistance against selling, and it was because of the perception that I had against selling. But when you really think of selling, selling is when you are really serving somebody at a high level. Now, I'm not talking about people trying to get somebody to buy something that they really don't need, they can't use, and they're overpaying for it. Like to me, I think that's manipulation. That's not really selling, but selling is when you really know somebody can benefit from the offer on the other side, and you are convinced, number one, in what you're selling, because we have to start there. Like anything that we sell, we have to be totally sold out that we actually believe in it, and it's actually going to serve the people that we are trying to sell it to. So when you start there, it's like now it's, you're trying to really genuinely help somebody. So it's not so much about how much money can you get from this person, but it's about like, I have something that can genuinely help this person. And so it's like when you approach every selling situation as if you're really helping somebody, you show up with a totally different energy versus somebody show up with energy like, I'm trying to get my car note paid or my rent paid, or I'm trying to get money to buy my family food. Like you show up with a totally different energy. And that causes resistance unconsciously on the other end to the people who you're trying to sell to. But when you truly show up and you try to serve and you're just selling somebody something that you know is in their best interest to have, sometimes we don't realize that selling is not a transference of information, it's a transference of energy. And it's like when you show up with an energy to help somebody, they're a lot more open and receptive to buy anything that you're selling than if you don't show up with that same energy.
Oh, that completely makes sense. Chris, thank you for unpacking this powerful topic with us for everyone listening. Your story isn't just your pitch, it's the soul of your business. And make sure it's serving you as much as your audience. Until next time, keep your message authentic, your mind clear, and your heart.